Welcome back to Empire State Weekly, everyone. I'm Tim Lake in Albany. It is official now. New York Senator Kirsten Gillibrand is running for president. The Democratic U.S. Senator from here in the Capital Region made it official just ahead of her nationally televised appearance on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert Tuesday night. Listen.
I'm going to run for president of the United States because as a young mom, I'm going to fight for other people's kids as hard as I would fight for my own, which is why I believe that health care should be a right and not a privilege. It's why I believe we should have better public schools for our kids, because it shouldn't matter what block you grow up on.
Now, Gillibrand's announcement comes less than 3 months after she said she would serve out her entire 6-year Senate term, something Republicans say proves, they say, she can't be trusted. New York Republican Chairman Ed Cox, for example, saying in a statement that she has demonstrated a disturbing disregard for the truth and principled positions in the name of self-serving personal advancement. If she treats her current constituents with such disrespect, we shudder to think what she would do to the nation. That coming from the Republican chairman. So, what are Gillibrand's chances of winning the 2020 Democratic primary? A recent poll showed that she's getting less than 1% among likely caucus goers in Iowa. And that, by the way, is the first stop on the campaign trail and where Gillibrand is making her first stop this weekend. So now joining us is Siena College Assistant Professor of Political Science, Jack Collins. Thank you, Jack, for coming in today. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
So, what are Gillibrand's chances? I have no doubt that she is certainly capable of running, but as you know, and Diane, this pack, this field of candidates is growing almost
very
by
quickly.
the week. What do you feel are her chances?
It's a huge field, so I think anyone can separate themselves early and really do well with 15, 20% of the vote. By the time we get to Iowa and New Hampshire, 15, 20% might put you in second, right? So I think that she doesn't need to win right now. She needs to get her message out there, get her name out there. If she's able to do that capably, then certainly she could end up becoming a contender.
So let's look at her qualifications. Some people have said that there's a bit of a two-sided coin for Gillibrand, that she really hasn't put her name on a lot of legislation so far. On the other hand, people say she doesn't have a lot of baggage either. What do you see?
I mean, it really is a two-edged sword, right? So you have, on the one hand, she is well known in New York State, where there are a lot of Democratic donors. On the other hand, outside of New York State, as Tim just mentioned, she doesn't really have much name recognition. A Marist NPR poll that came out yesterday said that 65% of those surveyed hadn't even heard of her. Right, so she's got a lot of room to grow as a result of that, but she could also end up having her message co-opted by others. She certainly is going to have a hard time fighting through the thicket of the 15 to 20 other candidates who might emerge.
We just heard her mention a couple of the issues she's interested in, health care, education. What's her platform? What's she running on? And after you answer that, I want to bring in this Trump angle, too, because she has been perceived as this, the adversary to President Trump.
Sure thing, right. So one of the things that we saw when she announced her candidacy, if you are on Twitter or if you follow and get the notifications from various news outlets on your phone, one of the things that kept popping up is that she's the Me Too candidate. She's the candidate who's openly embracing gender as an issue in this election. So it seems to me like that's really her best angle. She has this long history of working for sexual assault victims in the military and elsewhere. And so that's really what she's known for in Democratic circles. Whether that helps her or hurts her in the long run, it remains to be seen, of course. But that's also a good angle to attack Trump on, right? So we know that he has a lot of those issues with the accusations of sexual assault in his history. And so having a candidate who can openly talk about that, who has a long track record on that, it certainly can't hurt her.
And as you say, how much is she known on a national platform? Well, she really had a huge moment in the national spotlight when she called for Al Franken's resignation. So did that help or hurt her among her fellow Democrats?
It really remains to be seen, right? We know if you're plugged into Twitter, it certainly looks like it hurts her. But we also have to remember that that represents a very, very small portion of the potential Democratic primary voters. So there's really a lot of movement possible here at this point where she might end up winning because of that, right? Where a lot of people say, she's not a hypocrite. When this happened in her own party, she took a stand, she opposed someone who was very popular within the party. but it could also hurt her, right? Donors don't seem to be particularly happy about it, and so as a result of that, she might end up being hurt by this same action.
Here's an issue that I'm curious about. Diane, you were covering news here in New York when she was appointed by Governor Patterson,
Right.
and then this whole Hillary Clinton angle. I mean, does she want to be perceived as a friend of Hillary? Does she want to benefit from Hillary Clinton's supporters, which it means a large group of women? How does she handle that issue if she doesn't want to be tagged as someone close to Hillary Clinton?
Well, I think for any political candidate, you may want to take the good and set aside the bad, right? She doesn't want to have any of Hillary Clinton's baggage, but she probably wants to tap into that Me Too aspect and I'm with her aspect. And I think, being a strong female leader is something that she definitely wants to be aligned with.
Yeah, right. So Hillary Clinton certainly supported her in her appointment for Senate, and since then, she's certainly been friendly with the Clintons, but in the wake of the Al Franken resignation, she took some fire for saying that perhaps President Bill Clinton should have resigned after the Monica Lewinsky scandal or during the Monica Lewinsky scandal. So it certainly seems like she's trying to play both sides of the issue a little bit. She wants to be recognized as maybe the heir apparent to Hillary Clinton like she was in the Senate, but she also doesn't want to be pegged as too friendly with the Clintons, too much like Clinton, and that brings some of that 2016 baggage in.
With women now in the race, I'm curious, at some point Hillary's going to have to come out and either endorse or become close to one of the candidates. And I mean, how does she do that with Gillibrand here? Does she forego someone from her own state? Does she choose someone else? That's going to be a key issue to watch play out, isn't it?
It definitely will. It wouldn't surprise me to see Hillary Clinton sort of hang back. And then if it really gets desperate where there are 2 or 3 candidates really duking it out and it looks like it's going to hurt the party long term, Hillary Clinton might then jump in. But certainly as that sort of party elder, it doesn't seem like she's really willing to play the kingmaker just yet.
So the other thing has to do, the other area that Senator Gillibrand may be vulnerable to some attack is not so much even just the flip-flopping on I'm going to serve this term out and I won't seek higher office. It's some of the positions that she held previously. Isn't that an area where the other people who also want to get the Democratic endorsement are going to hit hard?
Sure, it absolutely will be, right? We see that with her as well as with someone like Beto O'Rourke. They've had moderate streaks in the past, maybe even conservative streaks in the past.
The gun control, right, and the border control.
Border control, exactly, right? So one thing that she has said multiple times is that she's evolved on these issues. Another line for her might be that, well, I represented a moderate to conservative district. Certainly that district, as it was drawn then, it was the 20th district, very red. It didn't include a lot of those Albany voters. So she could say, I represented my constituents' interests, but then when I got to the Senate, it's a much more diverse, much more liberal constituency. So that's another line that we probably will see her say at some point, but it will be tough. That opens her up to those lines of attack.
What is she going to have to say to make up for her comment where I'm going to serve out my 6-year term, as she was running for Senate, which was just last year?
Yeah, that certainly seems like a gaffe at this point, right? Yeah. But, at the same time, we see that, you opened up with a statement from Ed Cox. Ed Cox wasn't going to vote for Kirsten Gillibrand. And I'm inclined to say that anybody who really doesn't want to vote for her on those terms, on that issue, probably wasn't going to support her to begin with. So I don't know that it will end up hurting her all that much. It's fairly common for politicians to say, I'm committed to serving in this office for which I'm running for election at this point, and then turn around and say, well, I do have higher aspirations, but whether or not that ends up hurting her, I'm skeptical.
Okay. Well, Jack Collins, political science professor from Siena College here in Eastern New York, and Diane Donato, thank you very much. We appreciate having you on.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, coming up, the state is now stepping up to help workers affected by the federal government shutdown. How New York State is trying to help people out in a couple of different ways.